The government has been in the process of formulating 2026-27 financial year budget and also the medium term. We have, in this regard, prepared a draft 2026 budget policy statement containing the proposed policies and resource limitations for the period. That is the resource envelope. It's already on our website. This document has already been uploaded on the National Treasury website for public review and comments. I am looking forward to receiving valuable comments from you to inform its finalization before we submit it finally to Parliament by mid-February. I wish to urge for your concerted effort to enable us build a Kenya where opportunities are accessible to all, where youth are empowered to lead, and where our collective aspirations become reality. Together, we can forge a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient nation. On privatization, and I'm drawing to a close. I'm back in very few papers. Then it has sema machache off the cuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, on privatization, I have this to say. Privatization is often part of a broader process of structural reform. Privatization transactions are complex and require careful consideration of a number of issues. Well-designed and implemented privatization policies are essential to ensure credibility of reforms, to help governments achieve their objectives, and to create efficient and competitive markets for goods and services. Privatization of state-owned enterprises ushers in the private sector to participate in commercial activities that government-owned enterprises are taking. This is necessary because the private sector carries out commercial activities more efficiently than public sector, especially in competitive industry. By the way, I hope you are aware that you as individuals and your private businesses are included when I make reference to the private sector. It's not some strange animal somewhere. If you can do some small business, you are also in the space of the private sector. The benefits of privatization include, but is not limited to, the following. 1, lower prices, better quality of goods and services produced, wider choices for consumers, more innovation, minimal red tape in decision making, and of course, less corruption. That is the value and virtues which the private sector bring into business. Less corruption. To safeguard these benefits of privatization, the government has a social obligation to maintain a fair business environment through appropriate regulations and policies. Already, Kenya has developed a fairly robust regulatory environment with the Competition Authority of Kenya overseeing all sectors of the economy, supported by sector-specific regulators such as Communications Authority of Kenya. So privatization as a key tool to address the following 3 main or major economic issues. That is, balancing of government debts, public expenditure rationalization, and revenue raising, which we also call revenue mobilization. So we talk about revenue mobilization, we talk about expenditure rationalization, and we talk about government debt. In this regard, a robust program must be designed to address fiscal sustainability challenges by limiting government debt, constraining budget deficits, that is reducing budget deficit. And that is one of the questions that one of us asked, that what are we doing to make sure that we correct the messes of the past? 1, we are limiting government debt. 2, we are constraining budget deficits. And we are promoting counter-cyclical fiscal policy. Having pursued in the past few years fiscal consolidation, the policy has now reached optimal levels and hence cannot be pushed further. Kenyans are saying they are choking. We are overtaxing them. We cannot continue to tax Kenyans anymore. And what I mean here is not that you are not going to pay taxes. What I'm saying is that we cannot continue increasing taxation. If anything, now we must look for ways of reducing the tax burden on Kenyans. That is what we expect you don't expect any more taxes to be loaded onto your pay slips or your businesses. In fact, yesterday I said, well, in Kakamega, that if you are someone who has gone to school to learn matters taxation, one of the principles of taxation is that you target wealth. You target rich. After targeting wealth is when you can come to income. Income should attract the least tax. And finally, the segment that should not even be taxed is trade. Trade should never be taxed. So we should try as much as possible to reduce taxes on trade. Let people do business, make their money, and expand those businesses. You know, when you have more money, you expand business and you create jobs. That is the only way you can create jobs. By allowing people who are doing business or who are in trade to do business and expand their, make money, use that money to expand their businesses and employ more people. That is the only way to create jobs. And that is probably one of the areas we are not getting it right. That is why you find our unemployment levels continue to rise. We need to look at that area very carefully. And I've tasked my team at the National Treasury to see how we can make trade more friendly in terms of tax policies. You will agree with me that unlike taxation, privatization can never reduce private sector wealth. Taxation reduces people's wealth, but privatization does not. Instead, it encourages propensity to invest and enhances aggregate demand, which in the long run would widen the revenue base. So, privatization does not reduce wealth. Instead, it enhances wealth. Ladies and gentlemen, as I wind up, I want to just mention that our economy, the Kenyan economy, is at a critical turning point. And to sustain the economic achievements that have been realized thus far, both from macro and fiscal perspectives, like lower inflation, lower interest rates, currency stabilization, GDP growth, we must turn to innovative financing mechanisms to fund our infrastructure and public service projects. As the financial needs of the government continue to outpace our available public resources, private sector participation has become a critical tool in addressing infrastructure gaps, enhancing service delivery, and promoting sustainable development. There are many success stories. I know one of us spoke about cases where privatization has failed. And indeed, it is true. There have been previous attempts to privatize some government institutions with disastrous outcomes, like Uchumi Supermarket. But probably one of the reasons why Uchumi failed and others which have failed is because of the timing. Privatization, if you don't time it perfectly, then you definitely fail. But those privatizations that have been timed have succeeded. And let me give you examples. The first one is with regards to Safaricom. Safaricom was started in 1997 as a small department in government, very tiny. It was making profit, yes, but it was not a profit worth talking about. The government, therefore, made a decision at one point to privatize Safaricom. We are not privatizing Safaricom today. Safaricom was privatized several years back when we allowed 40% of the share ownership to be released to Vodacom. So the government then of President Moi retained 60%. 40% was sold out or divested and released to Vodacom through Vodafone Kenya, which is a subsidiary of Vodacom South Africa, which Vodacom South Africa is a subsidiary also of Vodafone UK. So the parent company is called Vodafone UK. Vodafone UK formed a subsidiary in South Africa called Vodacom. That subsidiary came and invested in Kenya and formed a subsidiary called Vodafone Kenya. So it is Vodafone Kenya which owns 40% today of Safaricom. 60% was still held by the government. Come 2008, President Kibaki saw it fit that the government was still too heavy in Safaricom and decided to release more ownership of Safaricom. But at that time, a decision was made to release it to people, to individuals, Kenyans and those international investors, but individuals. These individuals now own 25%. So Kibaki, Moi sold 40%, if we can use that word, selling liberally, and left us with 60 as a government through the National Treasury. I am the shareholder in Safaricom on behalf of the people of Kenya. After that, Kibaki came and released 25% to the people, both Kenyans and foreign investors. Now that took away 65% of ownership of Safaricom from the government. Today, the government has only 35%. But the kind of profit that we are now getting out of this 35, the dividend that Safaricom gives government, is much more than when we held 100% of Safaricom. Why? Because the private sector brought in efficiency and management style that has transformed Safaricom to be the largest and the most profitable company in East and Central Africa. There's not even a single company that makes more profit than Safaricom. So we have this 35, but we are still making much more money. But then, in business, you must always be dynamic and pragmatic. If you sleep and you say, yes, because now I'm making huge profits, that there should be no changes, this Safaricom must continue, must remain. Let me tell you, the telecommunication sector is very dynamic and changes every day. There is technological advancement. Safaricom must respond. Safaricom must invest in other regional markets. Already Safaricom has gone to Ethiopia. They have not broken even. They are still not making profit, but they have expanded into Ethiopia. Safaricom must be supported to get into other markets in the region. And that will require heavy investment. Even before we go to talk about government financial needs, let us talk about the Safaricom as a company, Safaricom Kenya, which we call Safaricom PLC. It requires more money. And let me tell you this. People who have knowledge in finance, like us, we know this for a fact. That when a company requires more resources, more capital injection, they will do what we call capital call. They will go to the shareholders and tell them, we need money, we need 50 billion, we cannot continue operating the way it is, we need 50 billion. And the moment they say they need 50 billion, the government of Kenya holding 35% will be required to contribute 35% of that 50 billion, which will translate to about 16, 17, 18 billion. Now, at that time, already a call has been made. A call is made to John Mbadi, who is the CS National Treasury. I am sitting at the National Treasury, and Safaricom needs 18 billion. And at that time, lecturers are in the streets protesting for low salary. They want their salary to be enhanced. Our doctors are in Upper Hill calling Duale to come down because there is no money. Our children need more money to go to school. There is no capitation. We need more money to go to SHA because the 13 billion that are put for primary health care is not enough. You require 4 billion more, like now I've been told. We have to release 4 billion more to go to SHA for primary health care. 8 billion that we are put for emergency, chronic, and critical illnesses like cancer, diabetes is not enough. I am weighing these options. Do you think I will put money in Safaricom, or I will put money to pay lecturers, and put money to pay SHA, and put money to pay capitation? Which one, where will I put money? Will I put money for education of our children, or give money for more shares in Safaricom? And what then happens to Safaricom? This is what will happen. Because the government of Kenya as a shareholder has no money to put, the other shareholders will come in to put more money where the government would have put. And your shareholding will be diluted without paying you even a shilling, whether you like it or not. And it has happened with KCB previously. KCB, there was a call-up like that. Government didn't have money. Our share ownership came down automatically because there were other investors ready to put in money to get the company on its feet. That can happen with Safaricom. And we have seen it. And that is why we are saying we must release some of the ownership of shares in Safaricom when we can be paid good sum of money, reasonable, decent. 204 billion is not pocket change. Even if we were to wait for that dividend from Safaricom, how much is it? 15% gives us about 7 billion per year. This 15% that we are releasing would give us about 7 billion at the current dividend payout rate per year. Divide 204 by 7, how many years is that? About 30 years is when we will get this money that we are getting today. That is before you take into consideration the time value of money. As accountants, we know what we call time value of money. 7 billion today is not the same as 7 billion 10 years from today. But let me come back a bit. I don't know whether I'm speaking to anyone in the room. Let me be a preacher today. Am I speaking to anyone in the room? Yes. Let me come back to a little. These young people who are coming out of colleges, why are they frustrated? It's because hakuna kazi. Let me tell you, our economy is growing at 4.6, 5%, fine. But let me tell you, Kenyan economy with the rising population that we have in this country, the growing population, and the people who are coming out of colleges and universities and other training institutions, and Kenya is leading in this region and almost in Africa in terms of human capital. We cannot create enough jobs with 5% economic growth. We have done our assessment, and for this country to create enough employment opportunities for our people, we must get 7 to 7.5 economic growth every year. But that will not happen with the current infrastructure. It can never. When you leave Nairobi, you are going to Malava through Eldoret. You have to plan for a day. You will take 1 full day on the road. A distance you should cover in 4-5 hours if the road was done. Between Nakuru, Naivasha, and Nakuru is a nightmare because we don't have infrastructure. I don't want today to go into politics of which region has better roads than another region. You know it. And we cannot continue lamenting about the past. Whatever you do, you will not correct it. It's like losing a parent. You'll never get any other. Others will just pretend. But a parent you only get once. Yes. If you left Malava with your fish going to Nairobi, you must spend more in preserving it because the road is terrible. When you arrive in Kenya, you are coming from other place and you arrive at JKIA. Those of us who travel, you see the shame of our airport. We must develop that airport. The president has spoken about it. We must do it. And that is why I'm happy working with Ruto, because he's a bold leader. I would rather you make a mistake as opposed to not trying. That you are always cautious. You don't want to take risks. Because some tribal people will shout on top of their voices that you are doing nothing. But let me not go there before my time of going there. I am still on privatization. Listen to me. JKIA requires about 260 billion to do. Can we borrow money to do it? Do you want us to borrow money to do our airport? 260 billion. Airport which will take about 20, 30 years to repay back. And that loan you take, you will pay in 5, 6 years. That is why SGR has not given us the economic benefits that we thought we would get. Because it is a 30-year project and we didn't even land with it where it should have landed. We have left it in someone's shamba. It's not making serious economic impact as it would have. What if it reached Malava? And we accessed Uganda and we accessed Rwanda, Burundi, and Central African Republic, where we should have targeted as a market. Which market is there in Naivasha? Nothing. So is it paying? Who will carry their load all the way from Malava to chase SGR in Naivasha? Irrigation. We have done our calculation, and it is clear, my friends, you are talking about cost of living. We still have food shortage in this country. We are not producing enough. We lack maize, those of us who eat ugali. In fact, if you tell a Luo and a lawyer, and I know there are enough in the room, if you give them food, lunch, without ugali, there is no food. Hiyo ni kama breakfast. Any food you bring without ugali, hiyo ni breakfast. Now, ugali, the shortage of maize in this country is between 10 and 15 million bags every year. So sample this. Galana Kulalu, we have done experiment. Right now, we are harvesting. We have harvested, actually, from 1,500 acres that we did as an experiment. Each acre is producing between 30 and 35 bags. And in one year, you harvest twice. So that is 60 to 70 bags per year. 60 bags, let's take the lower. 60 bags. And if we do a dam along River Tana for Galana Kulalu, if we do the dam, we will spend between 30 and 40 billion. By the 200, we can irrigate 200,000 acres. Each acre producing 60, multiplied by 200,000. That is 12 million bags of maize every year.